Let us look at Event Emitter class. Event Emitter class lies in Events module. Many objects in Node emit events. For example, det server emits a event each time a peer connects to it. fs.readStream emits an event when the file is opened. All objects which emit events are instances of events.eventEmitter class. An event emitter instance faces any error, it emits an error event. When a new listener is added, a new listener event is fired, and when a listener is removed, remove listener event is fired. Event emitter provides multiple properties like on and emit. On property is used to bind a function with the event, and emit is used to fire an event. Let us look at the syntax of the class. For the instance where first the events module is loaded into the events instance, then event emitter object is created by using events.eventEmitter function. There are various functions in this class. The first one is add listener. This adds a listener to the end of the listeners array for the specified event. No checks are made to see if the listener has already been added. Multiple calls passing the same combination of an event and a listener will result in the listener being added multiple times. It returns an emitter, so calls can be chained. The next function is remove listener. Remove a listener from the event listener array for the specified event. Changes in the array indices in the listener array behind the listener takes place. Remove listener will remove at most one instance of a listener from the listener array. If any single listener has been added multiple times to the listener array for the specified event, then remove listener must be called multiple times to remove each instance. It returns emitter object, so calls can be changed. Next function is emit function. It executes each of the listener in order with the supplied arguments. It returns true if the event had listener and otherwise false. On function adds the listener to the end of the listener array for the specified event. No checks are made to see if the listener has already been added. Multiple calls passing the same combination of the event and listener will result in the listener being added multiple times. Let us look at an example. The first we load events module into events instance. Then we also make an event emitter instance using this function, and then we create listener 1 and listener 2 using appropriate syntax. And in the function of listener 1 we also print a statement that listener 1 is executed. Then we bind the listener 1 with connection event and also listener 2 with the connection event using add listener and on function respectively. Then we create an event listeners array containing the listener functions. Then we emit the connection event. Next step is to remove the listener 1. Now listener 1 will not be executed. Then we again emit the connection event. Then we load all the listeners into the event listeners function. In this listener 1 will not be present in this array. Then we print all the current event listeners onto the console. Let us try to execute this program. We can see that at the first time there are two listeners created. Listener 1 is executed and then listener 2 is executed. Then we remove the listener 1 and then execute listener 2. When we try to print the listener array, there is only one listener.